Hey everyone, it's time for part 2. Let me put this away. Of the story of Assipattle and the Mester Stoorworm. Now, as you recall yesterday, the Mester Stoorworm had arrived off the coast of Orkney, laying there with its gigantic head in the water, its huge unblinking yellow eyes gazing ashore, and its reeking poisonous breath coming out, turning the grass brown, destroying everything in its path. And the people of Orkney looked to their leaders to get rid of the Mester Stoorworm. And they had it was a terrible crisis, and they had the fellowship, the crisis fellowship. Everybody was in there, all the important people together, landowners, traders, the king, the wicked queen, and her evil sorcerer who went around with her the whole time. And then nobody knew what to do. Finally the queen stood up and she said, "Only one amongst us knows what to do. My friend the sorcerer. He shall tell us how we will be rid of the Mester Stoorworm." And the sorcerer got to his feet and he said, "Two are the ways you can get rid of the Mester Stoorworm. Two are the number of ways. The number of ways is 2. The second way is so terrible and horrible, I will not say it here in this room. The first of the ways is also terrible and horrible, but I will indeed say it here now in this room to all of you." And everybody sat like this, wondering what the terrible, horrible thing was that was coming. "To be rid of the Mester Stoorworm, one thing every man, woman and child on this island must do. They must take their most precious, valuable belonging down to the beach on Saturday, lay it on the golden sands and offer it up to the Mester Stoorworm. He will accept the gifts with his long tongue and be away." When he finished speaking, everybody looked very troubled. "But these are our people," thought the king. "It's my job to protect them. Why should I make them give up their most precious belonging just to please the terrible Mester Stoorworm? Nay, you must do it, otherwise he will remain and the whole island will be laid to waste by his terrible breath," said the sorcerer. And finally the king, standing up, said, "Let it be so then, that each man, woman and child must give their most precious belonging. Take it down to the beach on Saturday morning and offer it to the Mester Stoorworm that he may be gone." And so it was that on that Saturday morning, the people of Orkney, who were not rich people, they were very poor people living up there, they didn't have much. They took everything that they had that was valuable to them. Some took any money they had, gold, silver. Some took all pieces of jewellery that they'd had for a long time. Some even took down some of their farm animals, which were very precious to them. Or they took food that they'd grown. All their precious belongings that belonged to precious things were all taken down and put in a great big heap on the beach. And the Mester Stoorworm was out in the sea. There's 2 yellow eyes just looking, unblinking, no expression on its face. And then the mouth opened really wide. And all the people were on the top of the cliff looking down. They all backed off a little bit. And the huge tongue came out. Swallowed everything down. And the people looked down from the top of the cliff, waiting for the Mester Stoorworm to go away. Do you think it went away? No. The Mester Stoorworm just stood there, sat there in the water, unblinking, a little bit of smoke rising from its nostrils. The people waited. The mouth of the Mester Stoorworm opened, and again the horrible breath came out, destroying everything in its path, and the people turned and ran from the cliff tops. The next day, when everybody looked over the cliff, the Mester Stoorworm was still there. The next day, when they looked from the cliff tops, it was still there. And the next day when they looked from the cliff tops, it was still there. And still there, all like that for the whole week. And finally got to the Friday. And the Crisis Fellowship met again. What do we do? And finally the Queen stood up. Yes, the sorcerer knows the way. And he said, this must be done every week until the Mester Stoorworm is gone. Every week we have to... these are our people. We're supposed to protect them. We should make them give up all what's valuable to them just to please the Mester Stoorworm. Aye, that's Scottish for yes. Aye, you must do it, said the sorcerer. And so it was that for week after week after week, people were giving up all their belongings and everything that they had in the hope that the Mester Stoorworm would go away. And the Mester Stoorworm did not go away. And on the seventh week, everybody was up there on the top of the cliff, looking down. And once again, the big tongue came out and swallowed everything. And the Mester Stoorworm didn't go away. And there was a voice from the crowd. Is there not a man amongst you who will go down and fight the monster? I would do it myself. And everyone looked around. Who is this brave person who says they're going to fight the monster? And they looked around and they saw that it was Assipattle, the smallest, skinniest, laziest little boy in the whole group. Aye, I would go down there and kill the monster myself, he said. And all his brothers were embarrassed that everybody was looking at the family. Away, the boy's got havers in his brain, they said. That means like he's daft or crazy. And they gave him a slap around the head and threw some mud at him for good measure. Ignore him, he doesn't know what he's saying. And they dragged him off, and as they dragged him away, people could hear Assipattle. Even the big brothers had their hand over his mouth. They were like, oh my God, I don't want to, I can do it myself, no problem. And that night when they went home, the mum and the dad were in the farmhouse preparing the evening meal. And the boys were out in the barn threshing corn. And you know how corn grows, it's like a big piece of grass with the seeds at the top. Well, in the old days, they would just lay it on the ground and they would hit it with a kind of like a big stick to get all the seeds to come off the grain. And you could make bread from that. And it was hard work. They were out threshing the corn. And Assipattle, of course, was just rolling around in the midden and all the dust and all the dirt and everything. Just like rolling around, having a great time. Boasting about how he could go and kill the Mester Stoorworm. And the mother came out and shouted everybody in for their evening meal. And Assipattle, of course, was the first one to get up and run in, but his brothers caught him by the collar and pulled him back. And they slapped him around the head again, and they threw him on the ground and they covered him with a great pile of straw. So much so that it took him so long to get out, but by the time he got into the house, almost all of the food had been eaten.